Middle-earth: Shadow of War! I was introduced to this game about this time last year, and that's where I promised I would make a review for it. And this review has been 13, almost 14 months in the making. This video has been in production for over a year, and there have been so many things that halted the production of this video, but we're finally getting to it. So I was introduced to this game around this time last year by a great friend of mine, Feedbacking. Thank you for that. But anyways, there are no words to describe how much I love this game. Middle-earth: Shadow of War was released in 2017 as a sequel to 2014's Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor, another great game from what I've seen, which I'm actually playing through right now, although I probably should have played this one first. And I don't regret playing this game, though. The game originally launched as a single-player RPG hack-and-slash type game with microtransactions, which makes no sense whatsoever. But by the time I got to playing it, they were gone, so I never at all had to experience them, which is great. There's so much to go over in this game, it's truly insane, actually mental. I've had this review, like I said, I've had this review planned for over a year at this point, and several things have put it off. Things like my Xbox overdosing on meth, me just being lazy, me being stressed, me working on other videos. But the time for Shadow of War has finally come. I haven't watched Lord of the Rings in a number of years, but I'll definitely get back to it. I do love the whole trilogy, though. From what I remember, Return of the King is one of my favorite movies of all time. But anyways, while Talion secures the Palantir under the request of Celebrimbor, I'm going to finally get my review out for this game, because it's a long time coming. So first we're going to talk about the development / pre-release stages of the game. After the critical success of Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor in 2014, Monolith enjoyed a lot of the success the game brought, and creative director at Monolith, Michael DePlatter, said that Shadow of Mordor was a huge lesson for them in terms of how to make open-world games that people enjoy. Not much is actually publicly known about Shadow of War's development cycle, but I'll inform you with as much as I can. The development team at Monolith wanted to see what they could do with the sequel. People suspected that Middle-earth 2 was in development, and Monolith have stated in the past that development for this game was a living hell. While this game followed many of the same ideas that were in its predecessors, such as the Arkham-like combat, Assassin's Creed-like movement, and the Nemesis system, they had trouble making their own ideas for the new game, and development on the game eventually reached a grinding halt when Monolith's executive producer, Michael Forgey, unfortunately passed away due to cancer. Eventually, Middle-earth: Shadow of War was announced on February 27th, 2017, to be released that August on the Xbox One, PS4, PC, and also be part of the Xbox Play Anywhere system that Microsoft was implementing into their brand starting with the Xbox One X. However, that June, the game was delayed from August to October, announced by Warner Bros. Interactive. However, shortly afterward is where controversy began to set in. Warner Bros. Interactive announced that in order to commemorate the loss of Michael Forgey the previous year, a DLC known as the Forthog Orc Slayer would be sold for $5, along with Warner Bros. Promising to donate $350 of the proceeds of each sale to the Forgey family, which ended very recently on December 31st, 2019. Warner Bros. Received heavy backlash, and understandably so, for this decision, for what seemed to be them just cashing in on Forgey's death. Due to the understandable backlash from this decision, Warner Bros. Immediately made the DLC free and refunded anyone who bought it. Add on to that the several instances of creative differences within Monolith when working on this game. The game launched with microtransactions, and though they've since been removed, many people expressed their disdain with the decision. Ultimately, after a hellacious development, Middle-earth: Shadow of War was officially released on Xbox One, PS4, and PC on October 10th, 2017. Gameplay. There are 5 different difficulties. Easy, which is the easiest. Normal, which is self-explanatory. Nemesis, which is hard. Gravewalker, which is the hardest difficulty. And brutal, just Nemesis, but slightly easier. Since the game is like 74% RPG, there is a leveling system where you unlock new skills as you go, which is nice. The first piece of gameplay I'm going to go over is arguably the biggest thing, which is combat. There's just so much depth to the combat in this game, it's mentally deafening. This game's combat is actually on Arkham levels, and that is not a hyperbole. And there's different counters to perform depending on the skill you have equipped. They're all useful in their own ways. My personal favorite is the Fatal counter, which literally plays an execution when you counter. That's another thing I have to go over. Executions. They are freaking awesome. They're my favorite skill and they help out a lot. I love them to death. Literally. There's a certain skill where you can store up to 2 at a time, which is extremely helpful. You can also summon orcs as bodyguards in to help you. And like alongside friendly orc captains, a Caragor, which is a reptilian four-legged creature that lunges at things, and also a Drake. No, not the rapper or Drake Bell from Drake and Josh. I'm talking about the super cool, really awesome dragon creatures that you can fly around the map and slaughter things with. Now let me talk about dominating creatures. I'll definitely talk more about it as the review goes on, but for now let me just give you a basic understanding of it. You can dominate orcs, whether they be captains, just regular orcs, Caragors, Graugs. You can dominate different orcs. The Middle-earth, the Middle-earth is full of this in both games. There's so much cool stuff to do in this game, it's mind-boggling. I've already said that, but still. Then there's stealth. Stealth is really well designed in this game. There are 3 different types of stealth attacks. Well, actually kind of 2. But just with another one as a side dish. There's stealth kill, which I bet you don't know what that is. You have stealth dominate, where you dominate an enemy, then brutalize, which is the least stealthy of all the methods, so much so that I don't even really think it's a stealth move, but it's still really useful. Next, on to customization. It's honestly really nice. There's different physical appearance options, like different cloaks and armor, there's different daggers, swords, and ranged weapons that vary between a bow, an arrow, and a hammer. It's not in any way overwhelming, but it's really packed. The different options of gameplay, just to how you approach the game in general, is absolutely mind-blowing. Now I'm going to talk about capturing Mordor. So this is probably my favorite part of the game, and it's the part of the game I've been looking forward to talking about the most. The army building system in Shadow of War is honestly one of the best examples of game design I've ever looked at. Holy hemorrhoids, folks. This is actually brilliant. There are so many different orc captains that all have different names and mostly different lines of dialogue from when you meet them. My favorite ones are the drunk orcs, and it's pretty easy to see why just by listening to some of their dialogue. After defeating them in combat, you can either just kill them, shame them, which means leveling them down, or recruit them to join your army. You can't recruit them if they're a higher level than you, so my advice for that would be to shame them and then come back to them later and then recruit them then. So there are different armies for different regions. Also, if the captain or just an orc in general kills you, they get promoted for it. So it's a different army on which region of the map you're playing in. Every single region has a different army, so that now brings me to siege missions. These are some of the most fun things I've ever done in any 8th gen video game. They do get repetitive after doing so many of them, because it's the same routine every time. Capture the points, kill the war chiefs, kill the overlord, done. But the adrenaline combined with the gameplay makes up for the repetition in my opinion. In defenses, it's essentially the same thing with some parts cut out. Going back to the orcs for a second, they're actually characterized. Random AI-generated NPCs are actually characterized. They have a name and a subtitle, they have different pros and cons. They have mostly different dialogue. There are occasionally there are times where multiple captains share dialogue, but for me at least that's pretty rare. I've only really ever experienced it like once or twice. One problem with the orc captains that I do have is that a lot of them look pretty much the same in physical appearance, and the same voice actor is used for a lot of them, because I don't know how many voice actors were on the team for this game, but there were orc captains that had the same voice, which was just weird to me. I don't know. The thing is, there are so many unnecessary parts to this game, but the gameplay, nemesis system, and all these cool elements more than make up for it. This game is basically like Galactic Conquest from the OG Battlefront 2, but if it was in a larger chunk and was somehow even cooler. At least in my opinion, which is hard to do because Galactic Conquest was already super fucking awesome. You can have pit fights between orcs, which is really fun and I love doing them. Another thing is different orcs have different specialties. Some could be necromancers, some could be immune to fire, immune to executions, ranged attacks, or other things. Some can be enraged by a lot of things. There's one feedbacking told me about where he was enraged by injury. If you ever hit him, he would become enraged. There's so much fun to this that I really can't even go over everything. Orcs can betray you or start a rebellion against you, which depending on which orc did it, could be absolutely heartbreaking, although you can recruit them. Another orc after death can cheat death and come back. The orcs are by far my favorite part of the game. I think they're everybody's favorite part of the game. They were the thing that were used to market the game ahead of its release, and honestly, I can totally see why. They were a great marketing strategy for this game. On top of everything else the orcs are helpful for, they can also save you from certain death. When you're about to be given the coup de grace by an enemy orc, a friendly orc can swoop in and save you. As you progress through the game more and more, you'll encounter orcs that you try to recruit but can't because they use Iron Will, which means they're resistant to you attempting to recruit them, and you just have to kill them. They can retreat, which can be annoying at times, but you can stop them. It's best to have an execution or shadow strike kill when that happens, just by coincidence. But overall, the orcs are super awesome. I absolutely love it. Picture it like M-rated Lord of the Rings Pokemon, where you mercilessly siege fortresses to take over a population. Picture it as basically Nazi Pokemon, but set in medieval times. Alright, now we're going to talk about the story. The story of Shadow of War is actually pretty good. It's enjoyable, has a compelling plot, and unique dialogue. It's pretty good, go figure. It starts with your protagonist, Talion, who, after the events of the story in Shadow of Mordor, is still infused with the spirit of Celebrimbor, an elf lord who can violently murder things just as good as you. Oh yeah, and I forgot, there's spoilers for this as well. The game opens with a powerful, strong score by the composers for the game, Nathan Grigg and Gary Scheinman. I think that's how you pronounce it. You travel to Mount Doom to forge a new ring to be free of Sauron's corrupt power. But when the ring is complete, the character Shelob essentially holds Celebrimbor hostage, offering him back so much as Talion gives her the ring. When Talion finally agrees to give the ring to Shelob and he goes to Minas Ithil, however, there is bickering between himself and Celebrimbor. When Celebrimbor wants the Palantir retrieved, which was the right thing to do, Talion, being the idiot he is sometimes, wants to save his fellow Gondorians. That's another thing I have to go over with the story for this game. Talion is a strong leader, he's a good guy, but at times, he's a complete fucking moron. He could do something really smart one second, make a 300 IQ play, but then the very next, he's being a fucking buffoon. The thing with this game's story is that there are different quest lines for different characters. After you get about an hour into the game, you meet Bruise the Chopper, and that's when you unlock the feature to begin recruiting orcs. Remember how I said that orcs are the best part of this game? This is one of the reasons why. Because the game has a very hard time establishing its characters. So, most of the, don't get me wrong, the main characters, Talion, Celebrimbor, they're pretty good. But the side characters fucking blow. That's the thing. The orcs make up for the side characters being such fucking awful buffoons. And, most of the side characters just aren't really that noteworthy to me. Like I said, you have the main characters, Talion, Celebrimbor, and the orcs you recruit for the most part. All amazing characters, but most of the characters elsewhere, side characters like Idril, Castamir, Karnan, I really didn't find myself caring much about. I loved Ratbag during the Bruise quest line. He's still fresh in my memory, but most other characters really aren't. The only reason I remember Eltariel vividly is because she was there by the end of the game. The problems with the game's characters aside, let me talk about the boss fights. I think boss fights in Shadow of War are really good. There's such a rush of sudden adrenaline that goes into them when you're doing them. This makes them more intriguing, more strategic because of the combat. You can't just start spamming X. Anyways, back to the storyline. After a siege defense, spoiler up here, so you have 3 seconds to leave, 2 seconds to leave, 1 second to leave. Bruz betrays you, and cementing his name as the biggest bastard fuckwad in the main story. I hate him. You align with Ratbag and go on to attempt to kill Bruz and take back the fort. You take back the fort, but Bruz escapes. A couple quests later, you shame Bruz to the point where he becomes a really depressed guy, and the only dialogue is him whining, "It was always his fort, I don't want the fort." Then it's your choice what you do with him from then on. I chose to kill him in brutal fashion for his crimes, but we all do Christmas a little differently now, don't we? Many more quests. You run until you get to the last few Eltariel quests with Zog the Eternal. Those last few quests are all spectacular. Zog is a necromancer who uses a necromancer totem in one quest and uses it to make undead versions of enemy orc captains you've killed in the past, and you have to fight them and purify the totem whilst killing Zog. This type of stuff is really cool, and in my opinion, just another thing that makes the game what it is and as good as it is. All this stuff is really cool, but then the final quest hits, and then it's game time. After killing Zog, the final quest, simply titled The Bright Lord, is one of the best levels I ever actually played in a video game. The first cutscene to it is so empowering, so amazingly well made, that I had to mention it in this video. The whole mission is Celebrimbor, Talion, Eltariel, all of your orcs launching one last stand, one last assault on Sauron's army. Both ends give it everything they have at one another. I lost a few orcs in that exchange, but I don't regret playing through this quest. Eventually, the death of several ringwraiths later, a cutscene comes where Talion and Celebrimbor begin to have a dispute after Talion releases the spirit of Isildur, where Celebrimbor leaves Talion's side and possesses Eltariel instead. You then get to Sauron as the final boss of the game, where you play as Celebrimbor, and after supposedly defeating him, Celebrimbor is infused with Sauron. Talion, without Celebrimbor on the ring, slowly begins to die. However, the epilogue, Shadow Wars, is where you play as Necromancer Talion, which is awesome. Shadow of War's story overall is really good. I actually really liked it. Like, I went into it thinking I would like it, but I liked it better than I normally thought I would. So now let's talk about the open world, and I'm gonna be brief with this. Shadow of War does have an open world. You get to explore Mordor. This is gonna be also the most critical aspect of the game for me. I like the open world for Shadow of War, but I absolutely don't love it. It's certainly a huge part of the game, and if you took it away, it wouldn't be the same. But also at the same time, it doesn't feel nearly as lively or eventful as the open worlds in games like Skyrim, Red Dead Redemption 2, Breath of the Wild, or The Witcher 3. Apart from recruit orcs, kill orcs, engage in combat, do parkour, or other things, I don't feel like there's much to do or explore. There isn't much synergy. I won't say there's no depth to the open world, because that isn't true. Just, it gets repetitive after about 3 hours, especially after you unlock, before you unlock the feature to recruit orcs. The open world is certainly there, but it isn't very great in my opinion, and it's a huge problem for a game where the open world is a big part. I'll tell you, I love this game. I absolutely love it, but the open world is not my overall favorite part. So now let's talk about the fan reception. The fan reception overall for Shadow of War was generally positive. While the general audience of players took issue with the microtransactions at launch, like I said earlier, Warner Brothers did eventually end up removing them entirely, so now you can just play through the game exactly the way you should. And honestly, like, it's the way that everybody should prefer it. The game currently averages an 81 on Metacritic, whereas different game publications gave it varying ratings from a 7 to 9 out of 10. Many praised the game for the Nemesis system, much like they did the same for Shadow of Mordor. On Steam, the game has a review category of mostly positive. Overall, Shadow of War, it also sold incredibly well, selling 911,000 copies within its first week alone, and on the second week it doubled with even more sales, as well as high popularity and viewership on Twitch. The game was just really successful upon release, albeit not very well known and quite underrated within the gaming community to a certain extent. I think that's just because of the microtransactions, the reputation that it gave it, though. So now I'm going to conclude. So I think Shadow of War is an amazing, overwhelmingly impressive game. From start to finish, it's absolutely amazing, and it's a worthy game to play and sink your time into. Combat, music, story, gameplay, so much went into making this game awesome. I've had this review in the oven for several months by this point. Feedbacking was a huge pusher in this review. He's also done a multi-part review of this game himself, so go and check those out. They're great. I took a lot of inspiration from that into this video. I will go back and play through Shadow of Mordor now. I probably should have played through it first, and I'll play through it. I might review it once I'm done finishing it. I do have more videos that are coming out that are being worked on. I'll have a number of different videos coming out soon. I also plan to upload more on my second channel, More Seizure. My plan is to post content like walkthroughs of campaigns and just clips of me messing around with friends online. I've been Johnny Seizure, and I'll see you guys soon with more videos on the way.